Hi guys, welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to be looking at the four different type of elasticities of demand that you need to study in your syllabus. That is elastic demand, inelastic demand, perfectly inelastic, and unity elastic. Before that, just to recap from the previous video, we learned what PED is, which refers to the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a price change. So the value of the PED would give us two things primarily. That is a sign and the value. I think this is miswritten. This should be, it will give us the sign and the value, right? So it gives us the sign and the value. And so the sign will always be remembered negative because it's showing the inverse relation between price and quantity. When price is going up, the quantity will go down. So price going down, quantity goes up. So there's always an inverse relationship. So PD will always be in a minus value. When comparing with greater than 1, less than 1, we ignore the minus sign. Now the value, which is also known as the coefficient of elasticity, I mean, if we interpret the value, right, not the sign again, if we interpret the value, it would give us that whether the PD is elastic or inelastic. Okay, guys. So this is something that you need to know. Also now, what we need to study is about elastic demand and inelastic demand. That I taught you guys that when the PD value is greater than 1, it is elastic. That is, PD is elastic. Now, what do you mean by it? See, when you talk about elastic demand, it means that the quantity demanded responds proportionately more than the price change. You can write proportionately more, or you can write comparatively more, or you can even write relatively more as well than the price change, right? But don't, I mean, this is the only definition, or this is the way you need to explain elastic demand. Don't write, although yes, in terms of explanation, what elastic demand means is that consumer demand is more sensitive to a price change or more responsive to a price change. But don't write like that. Don't write more responsive, less responsive. Be very specific that quantity demanded responds proportionately more than the price change. Another thing that you can write is that when quantity demanded changes by greater percentage than the percentage change in price, right? Both are absolutely correct. Now, what are those goods that usually have an elastic demand? And this is something that you should be knowing. So the non-essential luxury goods are obviously goods which have elastic demand. Consumers are very sensitive to their price changes. Immediately when the price goes down, you'll witness a sudden surge or jump in quantity demanded. And we already saw that in the previous video as well. Luxury cars, luxury bags, luxury clothes, foreign holidays, air travel, consumer electronics like TVs, televisions, and smartphones. These all have elastic demand. Now, guys, coming to the very important part, that how do you draw the demand curve for an if the demand is elastic? So if the demand is elastic, you see the demand curve is drawn downward sloping. Like this, we learned that in the previous videos. But if the demand is elastic, it means that the quantity demanded will respond proportionately more than the price change. So you will start the demand curve from the vertical axis, it will go all the way down, but you see that this is made flatter. So here the PED is greater than 1, meaning that the slope is flat. But if you look at this demand curve, this is also a demand curve downward sloping. Here the PED is less than 1. The PED is less than 1. It means it is steep. So if the demand curve is drawn steeper, it means that the PED is inelastic, while if the demand curve is drawn flat, it means it is elastic. So how you need to draw the demand curve? This is how you will draw the demand curve. You will start the demand curve from the vertical axis, from the y-intercept, and then you will draw it downwards. Make sure that you're drawing the slope flat. It should be flatter. The reason why, and guys, the more closer it is to the origin, the more steeper you will make, the more inelastic it gets, or let's say the more less elastic it gets. So as you can see from your screens in the video, is that let's say if the price is going down by 10%, right? If the price is going down by 10%, you can witness a quantity demanded going up by 30%. Now these are just imaginary numbers, okay? I haven't recalculated them. These are just imaginary numbers. So if the price goes down by 10%, the quantity demand is going up by 30%. And by the way, so if you calculate the PED is percentage change in quantity demanded, that is plus 30%, divided by percentage change in price, that is minus 10%. So the PED value would be minus 3. Ignoring the minus sign, PED value of coefficient of 3 is greater than 1. So PED is greater than 1. It means that it is elastic. Now, even if I didn't really do that, in order to figure out, guys, hear me out. In order to figure out that the demand is elastic, I don't even need to calculate the PED because it's just so obvious from the face of the diagram. Just look at the diagram. Just look at the size. Just look at the width or the size of this box. I mean, just look at the jump from quantity demanded from Q1 to Q2. And you compare this jump of quantity demanded to the jump of price. Let's look at this increase. Compare this increase versus this entire increase. Which is bigger? Obviously, the quantity demanded increase is bigger. That clearly shows the demand is elastic. Quantity demanded responds proportionately more to the change in price, and consumers are more responsive here. Got it, guys? So this is how you'll draw the demand curve, and demand is elastic. Coming to what will happen when the demand is inelastic. If the demand is inelastic, guys, the PED is less than 1, and it means that the quantity demanded responds proportionately less. It's just the opposite. It responds proportionately less than the price change. Over here, you had mentioned proportionately more. You'll mention proportionately less than the price change. Another definition would be that when the quantity demanded changes by a smaller percentage than the percentage change in price, right? So now the what goods usually will have an inelastic demand, for example, necessities like food, water, shelter, they are less responsive to price changes. I mean, let's say even if you have less money and food is expensive, you will end up buying food. I mean, we're not talking about luxury food here, like basic food, bread, rice, right? Water, shelter, you'll figure out and these are the things that even if the price goes up, you will have to buy them or pay for them. Even if the rent of accommodation goes up, you will still end up paying the rent. Probably you'll cut down from other expenses, but you'll end up paying your rent because you can't live on the streets. So goods with fewer. So what sort of goods do have an inelastic demand? Like what sort of goods are goods where consumers are less responsive to their price changes, right? And let's say food like onions, tomatoes, bread, vegetables, fruits. I mean, if they get expensive, then people still end up buying them. So goods with few or no substitutes. So firstly, those goods that have few substitutes or no substitutes at all. So, goods with few substitutes, consumers know that even if the price is going up, they don't really have a lot of alternatives available. So they will end up still buying it. So consumers are forced to sort of consume them because they don't really have other options. Or goods that are habit forming or addictive, like cigarettes and alcohol, or drugs, different type of drugs that people consume. They're habit forming and they're addictive. So even if their prices go up, then consumers are less sensitive to that price increase because they're so addictive. Or maybe basic food staples, like we call them basic food staples, like rice, wheat, flour, sorry, wheat and flour. This is like flour. Rice, wheat, and flour are basically, called basic food staples, and they're less responsive to price change. If the price of rice goes up, the quantity demanded might fall. Obviously, it will fall, but not as much. In fact, it will fall insignificantly, right? Or let's say petrol and fuel. You need fuel and petrol for daily driving, right? Whether you're driving to work or some other place. Electricity, even if the electricity bills go up, you can't really close the fan. You will still open it, right? So how will you draw the demand curve for inelastic demand? So you will draw the demand curve for elastic demand. You will basically don't draw it like this. Draw it like this, meaning that it needs to touch the horizontal axis. The intercept needs to be the horizontal axis. Got it? Because this would just make it more steeper. So and you can clearly see yourself. Let's say how did I draw it? Like this. And how do I draw the elastic demand curve? Like this from the y-intercept. Now, if you look at the demand curve, guys, you can see that the price is going down by 30%. Again, imaginary numbers, but the quantity demanded is going up by 10% only. If I put this in the PED formula, percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price, the percentage change in quantity demanded is only 10% upon the percentage change in price. So the answer is, 0.33 something, which is less than 1, minus 0.33. So it's inelastic, but because it's less than 1. But again, I don't need to calculate the formula, use the formula to calculate the PED. The diagram itself shows that it is inelastic because you can clearly see the decrease in price. This price was significantly reduced by 30%, but the quantity only went up by 10% because consumers aren't really responsive, or they're less sensitive, or in fact quite insensitive to the price fall. This could be an example of, let's say, rice or bread. If the price is going down by 30%, it's not that you will stock up bread in your house. You'll stock the entire cupboard of bread in your house. It's not like that, right? So yeah, so this is what you need to know regarding demand being elastic and elastic. And now we're going to be moving to perfectly inelastic and unitary elastic demand. Now, guys, perfectly inelastic demand, as you can see right now on your screen, is basic on your screens, is basically You see, what is inelastic? Inelastic means that the demand is less responsive to a price change. So consumers are sort of insensitive to whatever, if whichever direction the price goes, if it goes up or down. I mean, demand doesn't really respond too much. I mean, and I told you guys before as well, this is only for your own understanding. You can't write too much, too less. You need to write the accurate words. That was quantity demanded response proportionately less to the price change. Anyways, coming back, that's what inelastic is. But perfectly inelastic means zero response. Because if inelastic means less response, and perfectly inelastic means zero response. Consumers are totally insensitive to a price change. And let's say if the price goes up, consumers will not reduce any quantity because quantity would still remain at what it was at the original price. And we do have some sort of, I mean, there is some real life application to this. Firstly, what you need to know with respect to IGCSE O-level syllabus is that you need to know what perfectly elastic demand is, how do you define that, and how do you draw the demand curve for it. And simple example. So perfectly elastic demand, in a perfectly elastic demand, the PED value is equal to zero. Zero means there is no change in quantity, and you draw the demand curve by a vertical straight line. And let's say at a price of $10, the quantity demanded was 10 units. When the price goes up to $12, it rises by 20%. I could have written P1, P2 as well, but I just wanted to show the figures. That makes it more relatable. Anyways, coming back, the price went up by 20%, but we see no change in quantity demanded. The quantity demanded stays at 10 units. If you put this in the formula, percentage change in quantity demanded, it means that there's 0% change in quantity demanded because there is in fact no change in QD, so it's 0 divided by the percentage change in price, that is 20. So obviously the simple math rule says that 0 divided by 20 would obviously be 0, right? 0 divided by anything would be 0. So that is why the PED is equals to 0. It simply reflects that quantity demanded does not change at all, even if the price rises or let's say falls. And in this case, the economic intuition behind this is that in this case, the consumers must buy the same amount no matter what the price is. And this could be because the good is, highly essential for life. Let's say a life-saving medicine, and it has no substitute at all. The good example that you can give is life saving medicine, right? So obviously, because the quantity stays fixed at 10, right? So if let's say you need to have 10 insulin injections to sort of save your, if you have let's say you're suffering from an illness and you need some sort of injections, let's say 10 injections a day, so you will have to have 10 injections a day, otherwise your illness will worsen. So no matter what, from wherever you arrange that money, you will. So so you can give an example like life-saving medicine like insulin has a perfectly elastic demand. So if the price of insulin goes up, patients still need the same amount to survive, so they cannot reduce their consumption. So this is showing that price has no effect on quantity demanded, and especially when the demand is perfectly inelastic. Coming to so it's a vertical straight drawn like a vertical straight line. Unitary inelastic demand is when the PET is exactly equal to 1. It means that the percentage change in price is exactly equal to the percentage change in quantity demanded. So if the price is going up by 20%, the quantity demanded is going to go down by 20%. Putting this in the formula, the percentage change in quantity demanded is minus 20% and the percentage change in price is plus 20%. So the answer should be equal to 1. PET is minus 1. Minus again, that doesn't really matter, it will always be minus, but 1 is showing that the percentage change in quantity demanded and price exactly equal. So that is unitary elastic demand. And how do you draw the demand curve for this? It is drawn like a rectangular hyperbola. That's all what you need to know, because this is usually going to be tested in the MCQs. They'll probably draw the shape like this and they'll give you 4 options and say ask you to sort of select which demand curve has unitary elastic demand. And this, I mean, the shape and things will get more advanced in A levels, but for O level IGCSE, you just need to know this. This is how you will end up drawing a unitary elastic demand like a rectangular hyperbola, and that's all. If you can also refer to my notes as well, it's drawn there as well, something like this, right? So the PET is exactly equal to 1, and that is all what you need to know over here. The last case that we need to discuss is, in fact, I forgot to mention this earlier in the video about this. I had mentioned 4 cases. There are actually 5. Is about perfectly elastic demand, and perfectly elastic demand is more of a theoretical extreme. Again, less real life application where the PED value is infinity. It's infinite. And what you need to understand this is that the demand curve is drawn like a horizontal straight line, just like you can see on your screens. So at a price of P1, the quantity that consumers are willing and able to buy is Q1 at a price of P1, and they can even buy Q2, but they'll buy Q2 at a price of P1 only, not less. I mean, you see, usually when you draw a demand curve like downward sloping, in order if let's say the consumers are buying Q1 at a price of P1, right? So if the consumers are buying P1 at a price of Q if the consumers are buying Q1 at a price of P1, and let's say you want to buy Q2, so for Q2 the price has to go down, only then people would be interested in Q2. But I mean, this isn't a regular demand curve. This is a special case where you have the demand is perfectly elastic, and elasticity tells us that how consumers respond to price changes, and this is telling us that consumers would be willing to buy any quantity but only at a price of P1. And if the price, let's say, rises by even a smallest amount, the demand would fall to zero. Get that? The demand would fall to zero, so the consumers would be only willing to buy any quantity, whether it's Q1 or Q2, at the same market price of P1. So this is what you need to know, that perfectly elastic demand occurs when the change in price, if the price changes, would cause a complete change in quantity demanded, meaning that if the price changes, the quantity demanded would fall to zero, right? So firm can sell any quantity at, the firm can sell any quantity Q1 or Q2 at the going market price of P1, but it cannot sell anything above it, right? And this is when you say that the PED is infinite, and that is all what you need to know. But even this explanation isn't really that important. The only thing I need to know is how do you draw the demand curve, and it's drawn like a horizontal straight line, and what does it reflect. So this much could be enough as well, what I've written over here for your exam purpose, and rest you'll find more stuff in my notes if you want to go through it. So this is it, guys. We have completed what elasticity is. We've completed how to calculate it. We've gone through the different type of elasticities and how to draw them, how does basically the demand curves, the shape of the demand curves, would reflect the respective elasticities. Now another thing that we need to do is, in the next video we're going to be discussing about the factors that affect the price elasticity of demand. Okay guys, so thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, take care.